In your childhood stories, the good guys win. Cinderella gets the prince. But in Viking stories, the cruelest, nastiest characters walk away laughing, usually with a bloody axe and a jar full of spit. When Odin decided to make a man, he didn't grab clay or magic dust. Nope, he asked the gods to spit in a jar. Even Thor, who normally solves problems with a hammer, eventually shrugs and spits too. Thus was born Kvasir, the wisest man alive. Because of course he was. He was literally made of god spit. Welcome to Viking mythology. So Kvasir went down to earth solving problems, being clever and generally outshining everyone. But fame and fortune, even for the spit-made man, have their downsides. Enter two dwarf brothers, Fjalar and Galar, who, let's just say, were not fans of Kvasir's. These guys make your average internet troll look like a Hallmark greeting card. What did they do, you ask? Did they challenge him to a battle of wits? A duel of riddles? Nope. They threw him a party. Kvasir, being the trusting sort, shows up, ready for fun and merriment. Bad move, Kvasir, because Fjalar and Galar, well, they stabbed him. Yep, dead. They drained his blood and mixed it with honey to make magical mead. This mead made you a genius poet. Did they share it? Of course not. Now you'd think killing the wisest man in existence and turning him into a beverage would be enough for 1 week, right? Wrong. Fjalar and Galar weren't done. They decided to invite a giant named Gilling over for dinner. What could go wrong, right? Well, for starters, they thought Gilling ate too much, so naturally, they took him for a boat ride and accidentally tossed him overboard. Then they dropped a millstone on his grieving wife's head. Enter Gilling Jr., a huge, angry, and now very much orphaned giant. He shows up at Fjalar and Galar's doorstep and politely inquired about his parents' whereabouts. When he found out what happened, he tied the murderous dwarves up and left them on a rock in the middle of the sea as the tide rolled in. Revenge? Served. Salty. Now let's shift gears to everyone's favorite hammer-wielding god Thor. This guy loved his hammer, so much so, he gave it a name, Mjolnir. But one day, the unthinkable happened. Mjolnir was stolen by giants. Not just any giants, but the frost giants. And Thor was not happy. Imagine a toddler who dropped their ice cream cone directly into the sandbox. That was Thor. The giants said, "We'll give it back, but only if Freya marries our boss." Freya, the goddess of love, beauty, and probably common sense, was like, hard pass. Thor, desperate to get his beloved hammer back, said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Yes, you heard that right. Thor decided the best course of action was to dress up as Freya. Thor squeezed into a dress, beard tucked in, trying to look like the epitome of grace and beauty. He even let them put a bridal crown on his head. And just in case the giants weren't suspicious enough, during the wedding feast, Thor ate 8 whole salmon, 1 ox, and 3 barrels of mead. Finally, the moment arrived. They brought out Mjolnir to bless the bride. Thor, struggling to maintain his composure, probably thought, about time. As soon as the hammer was close enough, he did what any self-respecting god with a serious weapon attachment would do. He jumped up, dress flying, and yelled, "I want my hammer back!" Cue epic brawl. Giants, surprised. Thor, pissed. Mjolnir, back where it belonged. And that's how Thor got his hammer back. Okay, ready for another story? This one involves everyone's favorite chaos goblin, Loki. Loki was a trickster god. One day, Loki got a little too cocky and bet his head with a dwarf, and lost. But when the dwarf came to collect, Loki, ever the master of loopholes, said, "You can't take my head, the bet didn't mention my neck." The dwarf, being a practical sort and probably a little amused by Loki's antics, thought, fine, 2 can play this game. So instead of beheading him, he sewed Loki's lips shut. Moral of the story? If someone talks too much, get a dwarf and a needle. Did Loki learn his lesson? Of course not. It's Loki, for crying out loud. He's the Norse god equivalent of that friend who keeps poking a beehive with a stick and wondering why they keep getting stung. So, naturally, he went on to cause more chaos, which eventually led to the gods tying him to a tree. Forever. And you know what? They probably should have thanked the tree afterward. So, next time someone says mythology is boring, just remind them. In Viking legends, people are born from spit, mead is made with blood, and thunder gods wear wedding dresses. And that, my friends, is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the wild, weird, and often downright wacky world of Norse mythology. Like, comment, and subscribe for more weird history. And remember, never mess with dwarves. They might be small, but they pack a punch. Until next time, keep exploring the cosmos, and maybe lay off the god-spit mead. The past speaks to us. It whispers of heroes and villains, of battles won and lost. We listen, we learn, we remember. We must, for the past shapes the present. It reminds us of who we are. The Vikings, raiders, explorers, traders. They sailed the seas, their longships like wolves on the waves. Their stories echo through time, tales of bravery, of cruelty, of cunning. Tales like that of Eiric. Eiric, young, strong, a warrior of the Raven clan. He had sailed with 30 men, eager for silver and glory. They found only death. Ambushed by Norwegians, his comrades slain, Eiric faced a fate worse than death captivity. Bound in chains, he stood before Earl Håkon, a ruthless Norwegian lord. Shame burned in Eiric's belly, hotter than any fire. To die in battle was one thing, to be taken alive, a trophy for his enemies, that was unbearable. In the darkness of the hold, amongst his captured kin, Eiric found little comfort. Only Bjorn, an old warrior, his beard white as snow, offered a glimmer of hope.
"Despair is a coward's weapon," Bjorn rasped, his voice roughened by age and battle. "We are Vikings, we die well," he pointed a gnarled finger at Eiric. "Even in death there is honour to be found."
Bjorn's words sparked a fire in Eiric's heart. The words echoed in his mind, igniting a fierce determination that he had never felt before. Bjorn, his mentor and friend, had always been a source of strength and wisdom. His words were like a beacon in the darkest of times, guiding Eiric towards his destiny. Eiric knew that he could not let Bjorn down. He had to rise to the occasion, to prove his worth as a warrior of the Raven clan. He would die, yes, but not as a broken man. He would not let fear or despair take hold of him. Instead, he would embrace his fate with open arms, ready to meet his end with honor and dignity. The thought of dying did not frighten him. It was the thought of dying without purpose that he could not bear. He would make his death meaningful, a testament to his courage and strength. He would face his death with courage, like the heroes of old. The stories of legendary warriors who faced insurmountable odds and emerged victorious filled his mind. He drew inspiration from their tales, knowing that he too could become a legend. His name would be remembered, not for how he died, but for how he lived and fought. He would be a beacon of hope for future generations, a symbol of what it meant to be a true Viking. He would show Håkon and his men what it meant to be a Viking of the Raven clan. They would see his strength, his resolve, and they would know that they faced a true warrior. Eiric's heart swelled with pride as he thought of his clan, the people he fought for. He would not let them down. He would fight with every ounce of his being, showing no fear, no hesitation. His enemies would tremble before him, knowing that they faced a man who was ready to die for his cause. He looked at his fellow captives, their faces etched with fear and resignation. They had been through so much, endured so many hardships. But now, in this moment, Eiric saw something else in their eyes. He saw a glimmer of hope, a spark of defiance. They were not broken, not yet. They still had fight left in them, and Eiric would be the one to lead them. He would be their beacon, their source of strength.
"We die as warriors," he boomed, his voice echoing in the hold. His words were a rallying cry, a call to arms. The captives looked at him, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew that their fate was sealed, but they also knew that they could choose how they faced it. Eiric's words gave them the strength to stand tall, to face their enemies with courage and pride.
A flicker of defiance sparked in their eyes. It was a small thing, but it was enough. Eiric saw the change in them, the shift from despair to determination. They were ready to fight, ready to face their fate with courage and honor. Eiric felt a surge of pride as he looked at his fellow warriors. They were not just captives. They were Vikings, and they would die as Vikings. Together, they would face whatever came their way, united in their resolve and their courage. The next morning, they were dragged before Håkon. The Earl, a bear of a man, his face scarred and weathered, studied them with cold, calculating eyes.
"You fight well.
Then a cruel smile spread across his lips.
Fight for me, and you shall live. Serve me, and you shall have riches."
The offer hung in the air, a poisoned apple. The blood eagle, a gruesome spectacle. The Vikings spat on the ground, their answer clear.
"So be it. Then you will die as you lived in agony."
He called for the blood eagle. One by one, Eiric watched as his comrades met their gruesome end. The ritual sacrifice, a horrifying spectacle of pain and cruelty, was meant to break their spirits. But the Vikings faced it with courage, their screams of defiance echoing across the fjord. A cunning gambit, Eiric's escape. Finally, only Eiric remained. The once bustling village was now eerily silent, the air thick with tension and the scent of burning wood. Eiric, a man of formidable strength and unyielding spirit, found himself standing alone amidst the ruins of his home. His comrades had fallen, one by one, leaving him to face the grim reality of his fate. He stood tall, staring death in the face, his eyes, filled with a mix of defiance and determination, locked onto his opponent. The executioner, a hulking figure draped in furs and wielding a massive axe, approached with a menacing grin. Eiric's heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to show any sign of fear. He knew that this moment would define his legacy. As the executioner approached, Eiric saw his chance. He had been waiting for this precise moment, studying the movements of his captors, and now, an opportunity presented itself. The executioner's steps were heavy and deliberate, each one bringing him closer to Eiric. But Eiric's mind was racing, calculating his next move with the precision of a seasoned warrior. He lunged, not at the man, but at the brazier filled with burning coals. The brazier, a symbol of both warmth and destruction, was his only hope. With a swift and desperate motion, Eiric threw himself towards it, his bound hands reaching out to grasp the searing metal. The heat was intense, almost unbearable, but Eiric's resolve was stronger. He slammed his bound hands onto the searing metal. The pain was immediate and excruciating, shooting through his body like a bolt of lightning. But Eiric welcomed it, for it meant freedom. The ropes that bound his wrists began to smolder and burn, the fibers weakening under the intense heat. Eiric gritted his teeth, his face contorted in agony, but he did not relent. The pain was excruciating, but it was a lifeline. Each second felt like an eternity, but Eiric's determination never wavered. He could hear the shouts of the Vikings around him, their voices a cacophony of anger and confusion. They had not expected this, and their momentary distraction was all Eiric needed. He could feel the ropes giving way, the bonds that held him prisoner beginning to break. The Vikings roared in astonishment and anger, momentarily distracted. Their cries echoed through the village, a mix of rage and disbelief. They had underestimated Eiric, and now they were paying the price. The chaos that ensued was the perfect cover for Eiric's escape. He could see the confusion in their eyes, the realization that they had lost control of the situation. Eiric used the chaos to his advantage. With a final desperate effort, he broke free from his bonds. His hands, though burned and blistered, were now free. He moved quickly, his body fueled by adrenaline and the will to survive. The Vikings were still reeling from the shock, their attention divided. Eiric seized the moment, slipping through the chaos like a shadow. He broke free, diving into the icy waters of the fjord. The cold was a shock to his system, but it was a welcome one. The water enveloped him, numbing the pain and washing away the grime of battle. Eiric swam with all his might, each stroke taking him further from the clutches of his enemies. The fjord, with its icy embrace, was his sanctuary, a place where he could find solace and plan his next move. Eiric's escape was not just a physical act, but a testament to his indomitable spirit and unyielding will to survive. He swam, the cold water numbing the pain in his hands. Each stroke was a battle against the icy grip of the river, a test of his endurance and willpower. The frigid water bit into his skin, but he pushed forward, driven by a primal instinct to survive. The river was both his enemy and his savior, a relentless force that could either claim his life or grant him a chance at freedom. He could hear the shouts of the Norwegians fading behind him. Their voices, once a cacophony of rage and pursuit, grew distant and muffled, swallowed by the vast expanse of the wilderness. Each shout was a reminder of the life he was leaving behind, a life of conflict and strife. But with each fading cry, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to start anew, far from the shadows of his past. He had cheated death, but at a terrible cost. Eiric survived. His body bore the marks of his ordeal, each scar a testament to his struggle. Exhausted but alive, he emerged from the river, his spirit unbroken. The journey had taken everything from him, but it had also given him something invaluable, a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of his own resilience. He returned to his people, his tale a legend whispered around the fires. The flickering flames cast shadows on the faces of those who listened, their eyes wide with awe and reverence. Eiric's story became a beacon of hope, a reminder of the strength and courage that lay within each of them. Around the campfire, his name was spoken with respect, his deeds immortalized in the annals of their history. He carried the scars of his ordeal, a constant reminder of his ordeal. Each scar told a story, a chapter of his life etched into his flesh. They were not just marks of pain, but symbols of his survival, his defiance in the face of death. His hands, once instruments of war, now bore the weight of his experiences, a testament to the battles he had fought and the victories he had won. But he also carried something more, the spirit of defiance, the will to live, and an unyielding determination. His eyes, once clouded with doubt, now shone with a fierce resolve. He had faced the abyss and emerged stronger, his spirit tempered by the fires of adversity. Eiric was no longer just a warrior, he was a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope for his people, and the cunning that had saved him. His mind, sharpened by his experiences, became his greatest weapon. He strategized and planned, always thinking several steps ahead. His cunning was not born of deceit, but of necessity, a tool to navigate the treacherous waters of life. Eiric's journey had transformed him, molding him into a leader, a protector, and a legend in his own right. Conclusion: honor, courage, and cunning. Eiric's story is a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Vikings. It speaks of honor, courage, and yes, even cunning. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure, and the human spirit can triumph. Remember Eiric, remember his story, and remember this: sometimes the greatest victory is simply surviving. We picture Vikings as brutal barbarians, axes gleaming, sailing the seas, striking terror into the hearts of, well, everyone. And yes, they were experts at raiding and conquering, but what about when they sacking monasteries? Turns out these fierce warriors were just as prone to silly mishaps, questionable hygiene, and frankly baffling medical practices as anyone else. Let's peel back the bearskin rug and expose the sillier side of Viking life. A Viking's pride was his longboat, sleek, swift, deadly. These ships were the epitome of Viking craftsmanship and ingenuity, designed to navigate both the open seas and shallow rivers with ease. After weeks of back-breaking labor to build it, that is. The process was grueling and required the combined efforts of many skilled hands. First, find a huge tree. Not just any tree, but one that was straight and strong enough to form the backbone of the ship. No cranes back then, just manpower and prayers to Thor for good timber. The felling of the tree was a communal effort, often accompanied by rituals to ensure the wood's quality. Next, the painstaking process of shaping the hull with axes and adzes. Each piece of wood had to be meticulously carved and fitted together, a task that required both strength and precision. Did we mention this was all done by hand? Imagine the blisters. The work was relentless, and the tools were rudimentary, making the craftsmanship all the more impressive. To seal the gaps? No problem. The Vikings had their own ingenious methods to ensure their ships were watertight. Just stuff it with animal hair and tar. Seaworthy and fragrant. This mixture not only sealed the gaps but also added a unique scent to the vessel. The finishing touch? A terrifying dragon head on the prow, a symbol of power and intimidation, because nothing screams peaceful merchant like a snarling wooden beast. These figureheads were designed to ward off evil spirits and strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. Off they sailed, smelling of tar and questionable life choices, ready to conquer new lands and seek their fortunes, to strike fear, and perhaps nausea, into their enemies. These ships were not just vessels, they were instruments of war, exploration, and survival, embodying the very spirit of the Viking Age. Got a headache, a flesh wound, or perhaps something more serious? The Black Death? Fear not, the Viking healer is here. With their unique blend of ancient wisdom and trial and error methods, they were the go-to for all ailments. Armed with an array of interesting remedies, they were equal parts mystic and, let's be honest, a roll of the dice. Their toolkit included everything from herbs to animal parts. Herbs and plants were used, some effectively, others less so. They believed in the power of nature even if it didn't always work out. Got an infection, slap some moldy bread on it. Yes, you heard that right. Moldy bread was their version of antibiotics. Feeling faint? Have a nice cup of skull moss tea. This earthy brew was believed to restore vitality and strength. And if all else fails, there's always bloodletting. This was their ultimate cure-all, believed to balance the body's humors. Because removing blood magically solves everything, right? It was a common practice, despite its questionable effectiveness. Surprisingly, Vikings were pretty hardy. They endured harsh climates and grueling physical labor, which likely contributed to their resilience. Maybe it was the harsh climate, maybe their diet of fermented fish, or maybe they just had really good immune systems after surviving their own medical treatments. Whatever the reason, they thrived in conditions that would challenge most of us today. Death by misadventure, the lighter side of Valhalla. While the Viking sagas often glorify the heroic and dramatic ends of warriors, there's a humorous side to their tales as well. Dying in battle was the ideal Viking way to go. It was seen as the ultimate honor, ensuring a place in the hallowed halls of Valhalla. A glorious end, Valhalla awaiting. The mead would flow, and the feasts would be endless. But sometimes fate had other, more embarrassing plans. Not every Viking met their end in a blaze of glory. Take the unfortunate Viking who, according to archaeology, died when a latrine pit collapsed on him. Imagine the surprise of his comrades. Talk about going out with a whimper, not a bang. It's a story that would have been whispered with a mix of pity and amusement. Then there's the tale, possibly embellished, but we can dream, of the warrior who choked to death on a fishbone during a boasting contest. In the midst of bragging about his exploits, he met an unexpected end. Pride, it seems, does come before a very fishy fall, a cautionary tale for those who let their ego get the better of them. And let's not forget the poor soul crushed by a cow while attempting to steal its milk, a mundane task turned tragic, a reminder that even battle-hardened Vikings were vulnerable to the whims of livestock. These stories, though less heroic, add a touch of humanity and humor to the Viking legacy, a legacy of brutal ingenuity. So, the Vikings are fierce warriors, skilled seafarers, and also kinda clumsy, smelly, and prone to questionable medical choices. But that's what makes them so fascinating. They were complex, flawed, and utterly human, even in their absurdity. They remind us that history isn't just dates and battles, but also the stories of real people, living, loving, fighting, and occasionally getting squashed by errant livestock. And that, perhaps, is the most enduring legacy of the Vikings, a reminder that even the fiercest warrior is only human, after all.